He shared food with two strangers. Seconds later, thousands of warships arrived. The shared meal. The wind on Dust Haven never stopped. It scraped across the dried-up seabed that passed for a settlement, carrying grit into every crevice, every corner, every mouth foolish enough to stay open too long. Cale Voss had learned to live with it. After 3 years on this forsaken moon, the wind was just another companion in a long list of things that wouldn't kill him. He sat outside Rena's trading post, his back against sun-bleached timber, picking at a ration pack that tasted like recycled boot leather. The protein bar crumbled between his fingers, and he washed it down with water that had been filtered so many times it barely remembered what moisture felt like. Around him, the outpost was settling into its evening rhythm, shutters closing, weapons being checked, the usual paranoia of frontier life. That's when he saw them. 2 figures stumbled through the settlement's outer gate, their movements unsteady, desperate. They wore travel cloaks caked in dust, hoods drawn low despite the fading heat. One supported the other, and even from a distance, Cale could see exhaustion in every step. No one else seemed to care. The few locals still outside turned away, disappearing into doorways. On Dust Haven, strangers meant trouble, and trouble meant you minded your own business. Cale should have done the same. He'd come here to disappear, to leave behind the burning cities and screaming that still haunted his sleep. Getting involved was stupid, dangerous, but the smaller figure stumbled, nearly falling, and something in Cale's chest twisted. "Damn it," he muttered, shoving himself to his feet. He approached slowly, hands visible. "Hey, you two need help?" The taller stranger's hood turned toward him, and for a moment Cale glimpsed something that made his breath catch. Skin with a faint violet hue, eyes too large and too bright. Then the hood fell back into shadow. "We need nothing from humans." The voice was musical, feminine, and utterly exhausted. "Right. Except you're about to collapse in the dirt." Kyle held up his remaining ration packs. "Look, I'm not trying to start anything. You both look like you haven't eaten in days. Take these." The silence stretched. The smaller stranger swayed dangerously. Finally, the taller one reached out. Her hand emerged from the cloak, slender fingers, that same violet skin catching the last rays of the setting sun. She took the rations with what seemed like reluctance, then something else. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition. "You share your sustenance freely." Her voice had changed, softer now, almost awed. "It's just food," Kyle said with a shrug. "Plenty more inside." The stranger lowered her hood fully, and Kyle found himself staring. She was beautiful in an otherworldly way. High cheekbones, that violet skin now clearly visible. Eyes like liquid amber that seemed to look straight through him. Her expression shifted from suspicion to something that might have been wonder or fear. "Sister," the smaller one whispered. "He doesn't know." "I know." Before Cale could ask what they were talking about, the smaller stranger's cloak shifted, revealing a pendant at her throat. It began to pulse with light, soft at first, then growing, until it painted the entire street in brilliant white radiance. The wind died, the world held its breath, and then the sky split open with thunder. The arrival. The first ship came through the atmosphere like a falling star, except stars didn't scream with engine fire. Then another, and another. Within seconds, the sky above Dust Haven was filled with vessels, sleek crystalline warships that shimmered with an iridescence Cale had never seen before. Hundreds of them. No, thousands. They descended in perfect formation, their hulls catching the dying light and transforming the dusty settlement into something from a fever dream. Cale stumbled backward, his hand instinctively reaching for the plasma pistol at his hip. Around him, the outpost erupted into chaos. People ran, screaming. Alarms wailed. Somewhere, someone was firing weapons uselessly at the sky. "Don't." The violet-skinned woman caught his wrist with surprising strength. "Please, they're not here to harm anyone." "Not here to..." Kyle stared at her, then at the armada overhead. "What the hell did you do?" "I didn't do anything," she said quietly. "You did." The smaller stranger had collapsed to her knees, the pendant still blazing at her throat. She was younger than her companion, her features sharper, her violet skin a shade darker. She looked up at Cale with something between guilt and excitement. "I'm sorry. I couldn't control it. The moment you offered food, the moment she accepted, the beacon activated." "What beacon?" "What are you talking about?" The taller woman released his wrist but didn't step away. This close, Cale could see the weight she carried in those amber eyes. Exhaustion, yes, but something deeper. Loss. Determination. My name is Lyra. This is my sister, Nira. And we are the last of the Atheron royal bloodline. The word should have sounded insane, but with thousands of warships hovering overhead, insanity had become relative. The Atheron Commonwealth. Kale breathed. That's just a legend. They collapsed centuries ago. We were scattered, Nira said, climbing shakily to her feet. Hunted, forced to hide. But the old protocols remained. The soul debt. She looked at Kale with an expression that mixed apology and wonder. When someone offers sustenance to Atheron royalty without expectation of reward and we accept, it creates a bond. You became our guardian the moment Lyra took your food. That's ridiculous. I don't even know you. The bond doesn't require knowledge, Lyra said softly. Only intention. You offered kindness when you had no reason to. In our culture, in our laws, that makes you ours. The possessive word sent an unexpected shiver through Kale's chest. The largest of the ships descended, settling in the clearing beyond the settlement with a grace that belied its massive size. A ramp extended and figures emerged, soldiers in armor that seemed to be carved from the same crystalline material as their ships, all bearing that violet skin in various shades. They moved with military precision, spreading out, securing the perimeter. At their head walked a woman who could only be a commander. Her skin was deep purple, almost indigo, and her bearing radiated authority. She approached Lyra and dropped to one knee. Princess Lyra, Princess Nira, the Atheron fleets have heard your call. Her eyes shifted to Kale, and something flickered in her expression. Confusion, then recognition. And this is our guardian, Lyra said firmly. Bound by the old ways, the commander's eyes widened fractionally. A human. My princess, the council will accept what has been done, Lyra interrupted. Her voice carried command now. The exhausted fugitive transforming before Kale's eyes into something royal. We do not abandon our traditions when they become inconvenient. Kale found his voice. I didn't agree to any of this. Lyra turned to him, and for a moment her regal mask slipped. She looked vulnerable again, almost pleading. I know, and I'm sorry. But you're in danger now, whether you walk away or not. Those who hunt us, they saw the beacon too. They'll come for anyone associated with us. She stepped closer, her voice dropping. Please, come with us to the flagship. Let us at least protect you until we can figure this out. Figure what out? Whether you want to stay, she said simply. Whether you want this. She gestured at the ships, the soldiers, the impossible situation. Whether you want us. The wind had started again, but Kale barely felt it. He looked at Lyra, really looked at her, saw the fear beneath her strength, the hope she was trying to hide, saw someone who'd been running for so long she'd forgotten what it felt like to stand still. He thought about his empty room above the trading post, his quiet, purposeless life, the ghost he couldn't outrun no matter how far he traveled. How long? He asked. What? How long until your enemies get here? Nira checked a device on her wrist. Hours. Maybe less. Kale looked at the sky, at the impossible fleet, at the woman who'd somehow become his responsibility in the space of a shared meal. He thought about walking away. He really did. All right, he said finally. But someone better explain exactly what I've gotten myself into. Lyra's expression transformed. Relief, gratitude, and something else. Something warm that made Kale's pulse quicken. Thank you, she whispered. As they walked toward the flagship, soldiers falling into formation around them, Kale couldn't shake the feeling that his quiet life had just ended. And somehow, impossibly, he wasn't entirely sure he minded. Into the storm, the interior of the Atheron flagship was nothing like Kale expected. He'd imagined cold metal and sterile corridors, but instead found himself walking through spaces that seemed grown rather than built. Smooth walls that curved organically, bioluminescent panels casting soft violet and blue light, the air itself carrying a faint floral scent that reminded him of rain. Lyra walked beside him, having shed her dusty cloak to reveal elegant armor that hugged her form. Practical, yet beautiful. She caught him looking and offered a small, tired smile. Not what you pictured? I pictured a lot of things today, Kale admitted. None of them involved this. They'd been given quarters near the royal chambers, a suite that was larger than any place Kale had lived in years. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the view of Dust Haven below, and the fleet spreading across the sky like a protective net. Nira had disappeared with the commander, leaving them alone for the first time since the beacon activated. Lyra moved to the window, her reflection ghostly in the glass. "You should rest. The medical bay can provide you with—" "I'm fine," Kyle said. "What I need is answers." "You said people are hunting you. Who?" She was quiet for a long moment. "Do you know anything about the Atheron Civil War?" "Just stories. The Commonwealth tore itself apart from the inside. Those stories are true. My family ruled for 3,000 years, but power—" She touched the glass, her fingers leaving faint prints. "Power corrupts even the best intentions. Factions formed. Houses that had served us turned against each other. The war lasted 50 years and killed billions." Her voice was steady, but Cale heard the pain beneath it. "My parents tried to stop it. They failed. They were assassinated when I was 16. Nira only 12. We've been running ever since, hiding, moving from world to world, watching as our people scattered to the stars." She turned to face him. "But there are those who believe the Commonwealth should stay dead, who think our return means nothing but more bloodshed, and they'll come for you now. They'll come for us." Lyra corrected gently. "The moment you became my guardian, you became a target." "I'm sorry, Cale, I truly am." He should have been angry, terrified. Instead, he found himself crossing the room toward her. "Stop apologizing. I made my choice. You didn't know what you were choosing. Maybe not, but I'm not running." Something shifted in her expression. Surprise, then something warmer, more dangerous. They were standing close now. Close enough that Cale could see flecks of gold in her amber eyes, could feel the warmth radiating from her skin. "Why?" she asked softly. "You don't owe us anything. The bond can be broken if you truly want." The ship lurched violently. Alarms shrieked through the corridors, and Lyra stumbled forward. Cale caught her instinctively, his arms wrapping around her waist. For a heartbeat, they were frozen, her hands against his chest, their faces inches apart. "Attack!" The commander's voice crackled through the ship's comm system. "All hands to battle stations." The princess to the secure chamber immediately. Lyra pulled back, her expression hardening into something regal and fierce. "They're here already. Faster than I thought." She started toward the door, but Cale caught her hand. "Where are you going?" "To the bridge. My people need—" Another explosion rocked the ship. The lights flickered. And then, through the chaos, came the sound of weapons fire, close, too close. In the corridor outside their quarters, Lyra's eyes widened. "They're already aboard. Assassins." The door exploded inward in a shower of crystalline fragments. 3 figures in dark armor rushed through, weapons raised. Cale shoved Lyra behind him without thinking, his combat instincts taking over. The plasma pistol was in his hand before he consciously decided to draw it. He fired twice. One attacker went down. The second dodged incredibly fast and returned fire. The bolt seared past Cale's shoulder, and he felt the heat through his jacket. He rolled, came up firing, took down the second assassin. The third had gotten past him. Lyra faced the assassin with no weapon, just her body between the killer and escape. She moved like liquid, ducking under a blade strike and delivering a blow to the assassin's throat that dropped them gasping. But there was a fourth attacker, one Cale hadn't seen, and they had Lyra from behind. A knife to her throat. Time seemed to slow. Cale aimed, knowing he had one shot, knowing if he missed, he didn't miss. The assassin crumpled. Lyra gasped, touching her throat where the blade had been. A thin line of violet blood, darker than human red, welled against her skin. "You're hurt," Kyle said, crossing to her. "It's nothing. You saved—" "Let me see." She let him tilt her chin up, examining the shallow cut. It wasn't deep, but seeing her blood made something fierce and protective roar to life in Cale's chest. He pulled off his jacket, tore a strip from his shirt, and pressed it gently against the wound. "Hold this," he murmured. Lyra complied, but her eyes never left his face. "You moved to protect me." Without hesitation. "Why?" "Maybe your bond isn't as one-sided as you think." Her breath caught. In the aftermath of violence, with alarms still wailing and her blood on his hands, something crackled between them. Something that had nothing to do with ancient customs or royal protocols. Kyle. But before she could finish, Nira burst through the damaged doorway, soldiers behind her. "Sister, thank the stars. Are you—" She saw the bodies, saw Lyra's wound, saw how close she and Kale were standing. "Oh, we need to move," the commander said, entering behind Nira. "The Royal Secure Chamber, now." As soldiers escorted them through corridors filled with smoke and the sounds of battle, Lyra's hand found Kale's. She squeezed once, a gesture that said more than words could. And Kale squeezed back, knowing that whatever happened next, he was exactly where he needed to be. Us. Hearts and Empires. The secure chamber was a fortress within the flagship, walls twice as thick as the rest of the ship, independent life support, enough supplies to survive a siege. But as Kale watched Lyra pace like a caged predator, he realized no amount of armor could protect her from what she was truly fighting. 17 ships lost, she said, reading from a holographic display that painted her face in shifting blue light. 234 souls, and we haven't even reached contested space yet. She closed her eyes, and Kyle saw the weight of every life pressing down on her shoulders. Nira sat nearby, her expression grim. The Varith Coalition sent those assassins. They've made their position clear. They'd rather see the Commonwealth dead than restored. Then we negotiate, Lyra said. We show them we're not the Empire of old. We can build something better. They don't want better, Nira interrupted. They want power, and our existence threatens that. She glanced at Kale. No offense, but having a human guardian isn't helping. The traditionalist houses are already calling it an insult to Atheron purity. That's enough, Lyra snapped, with more heat than Kale had heard from her before. Kale is bound to us. That bond is sacred regardless of who questions it. The sisters stared at each other, tension crackling between them. Finally, Nira sighed and stood. I'm going to the medical bay. My head is killing me. She paused at the door, looking back at Lyra with something that might have been concern or warning. Just be careful, sister. Some bonds are more dangerous than assassins. When they were alone, silence filled the chamber like water. Kale moved to where Lyra stood, her back rigid with stress. She's worried about you. She's worried I'm forgetting my duty. Lyra's laugh was bitter. That I'm letting feelings compromise, and she stopped herself, but the word hung in the air between them. Feelings. Is that what's happening? Kale asked quietly. Are you feeling something? Lyra turned to face him, and the vulnerability in her expression made his chest ache. I shouldn't be. You're my guardian, my responsibility. I should be focused on my people, on restoring the Commonwealth, on... She pressed her hands to her temples. But every time I look at you, I forget all of that. I forget everything except what? She closed the distance between them, and suddenly they were breathing the same air, existing in the same small space that felt both infinite and impossibly intimate. Except how you make me feel safe. How you chose to stay when you could have run. How you threw yourself between me and those assassins without even thinking. Her hand came up, hovering near his face but not quite touching. How much I want this to be real and not just some ancient ritual. Kyle caught her hand, pressed her palm against his cheek. It is real. The bond didn't make me care about you, Lyra. It just gave me an excuse to stay close enough to realize I wanted to. Her eyes widened, amber depths reflecting the dim light. Kyle. He leaned in slowly, giving her every chance to pull away. She didn't. Their lips met softly at first, tentative, exploratory. Then Lyra made a small sound in the back of her throat and pressed closer, her hands sliding up to tangle in his hair. The kiss deepened, became something hungry and desperate. Two people who'd been running for too long finally finding a moment of stillness. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Lyra rested her forehead against his. This is foolish, dangerous. Probably, Kale agreed. But I stopped making safe choices the moment I offered you food. She laughed, the sound lightening something in the room. But then her expression sobered. If we do this, if we let this be real, it will complicate everything. The houses will use it against me. Say I'm unfit to rule because I've bound myself to a human. That I'm weak, are you? Kale asked. Weak? Fire flashed in her eyes. No, then let them talk. You'll prove them wrong. Before Lyra could respond, the chamber door slid open. The commander entered, her expression grave. My princess, we've received a communication from the Varith Coalition. They're offering a ceasefire. Lyra straightened, slipping back into her royal bearing like a second skin. What are their terms? They'll recognize your claim to the throne and cease hostilities. The commander paused. In exchange for the human, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. What? Kale said. They want you exiled, removed from the princess's service. They claim your presence violates the sanctity of the royal bloodline. The commander's voice was carefully neutral. They've given us 1 hour to decide. Lyra's face had gone pale, her violet skin almost lavender. Absolutely not. My princess, please consider. I said no. The command rang through the chamber with such force that even the commander stepped back. The bond is sacred. We do not trade our people for political convenience, never. Even if it means war, the commander asked quietly. Even if it costs more lives? The question hung in the air, poisonous. Kale watched emotions war across Lyra's face. Duty against desire. The needs of millions against the bond she'd formed with one man. I'll go, Kale said. No. Lyra grabbed his arm. Kyle, no, listen to me. He turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. If this stops the fighting, if it gives you a chance to rebuild without more bloodshed, I don't care, Lyra said fiercely. I won't sacrifice you for a crown. I won't become the kind of ruler who trades lives for power. Even if it's what I choose? That stopped her. She stared at him, tears gathering in her amber eyes. You would do that? Give up your freedom, maybe your life for people you don't even know? I'd do it for you, Kale said simply. Because you'd never forgive yourself if you didn't at least consider it. Because I see how much this is tearing you apart. He squeezed her hands. Because I care about you, Lyra, more than I probably should. A tear traced down her violet cheek. That's not fair. No, it's not. They stood there, the weight of an impossible choice between them. Finally, Lyra turned to the commander. Tell the Vareth coalition we reject their terms. Completely and unconditionally. My princess, that's an order. Lyra's voice was steel wrapped in velvet. And send a message to all houses, all factions, all who would question our legitimacy. Tell them that the Atheron Commonwealth is reborn not on the foundations of the old ways, but on something better, on honor, on loyalty, on bonds freely chosen and fiercely protected. She looked at Kale. Tell them that any who cannot accept this can face us in open combat. But we will not negotiate with terrorists who demand we abandon our own. The commander bowed deeply. As you command, Princess. She left and silence returned. Kale pulled Lyra into his arms and she came willingly, burying her face against his shoulder. You just chose me over peace, he murmured into her hair. I chose what's right, she corrected, her voice muffled. And I chose us, if that's what you want. He tilted her chin up, looked into those eyes that had haunted him since the moment she'd lowered her hood on Dust Haven. It's all I want. This kiss was different from the first, deeper, more certain. A promise being made without words. When they finally broke apart, Lyra was smiling despite the tears on her face. We're going to war, she said. I know. We might not survive. I know that too. She laughed shakily. And you're still staying? Kale pulled her close again, feeling her heartbeat against his chest. Faster than human, but no less precious. Where else would I go? Outside the secure chamber, the fleet was preparing for battle. Across the stars, enemies were mobilizing. The future was uncertain, dangerous, possibly doomed. But in that moment, wrapped in each other's arms, Kale and Lyra found something neither had expected. Hope. And maybe, just maybe, something like love. The New Dawn. The Battle of the Shattered Gates would be remembered for centuries, the moment the Atheron Commonwealth was either reborn or destroyed forever. Kale stood on the flagship's bridge beside Lyra, watching as both allied and enemy forces converged in the contested system. The view screen showed a ballet of violence. Warships exchanging fire, fighters weaving through the chaos, the darkness of space punctuated by brilliant explosions. The Vareth coalition's main fleet is moving to flank us, Nira reported from her station. Her face was grim, professional. They're trying to cut off our supply lines. Lyra studied the tactical display with the intensity of someone who'd spent years preparing for this moment, even while running from it. Redirect the northern squadrons. I want the civilian transports protected at all costs. She glanced at the commander. And prepare the sovereign protocol. The bridge fell silent. The commander's eyes widened. My princess, that hasn't been used in 300 years. The risk is mine to take. Lyra's voice was firm. If we're going to end this, it won't be through endless bloodshed. We prove our strength, then we offer mercy. That's how we build something new. Kale had learned enough about Atheron military history to know what the Sovereign Protocol meant. The reigning monarch would pilot a fighter personally, broadcasting their presence on all channels, offering single combat with the enemy's champion to determine the outcome. It was ancient, supposedly ceremonial, also incredibly dangerous. No, he said flatly. Lyra turned to him, one eyebrow raised. I don't recall asking permission, Guardian. Then I'm not giving it. I'm telling you, don't do this. Around them, the bridge crew suddenly found their stations incredibly interesting. Nira covered what might have been a smile. Lyra stepped closer to Kale, lowering her voice. I have to. If there's even a chance to end this without more deaths, then send someone else. Not you. It has to be me. The whole point is showing I'm willing to risk everything for my people, that I lead from the front, not from safety. Her hand found his. You understand that. I know you do. She was right, damn her. Kale had been a soldier long enough to know that sometimes leadership meant putting yourself in the line of fire. But knowing it and accepting it when the person you cared about was the one taking the risk were two very different things. I don't like this, he said. I know. She squeezed his hand. But I need you to trust me. Before he could argue further, an explosion rocked the flagship. Closer this time. The Vareth coalition was pressing their advantage and time was running out. Lyra made her decision. Commander, prepare my fighter. Guardian Kale. She looked at him and he saw both determination and fear in her eyes. You're coming with me. What? The Sovereign Protocol allows for a champion pair. A pilot and a guardian. A small smile touched her lips. Traditionally, it's been two Atheron nobles. But there's nothing in the law that says it has to be. And I'm not doing this without you. Kale felt something crack open in his chest. Around them, he could hear the bridge crew whispering, see the shock on Nira's face. This wasn't just unconventional, it was revolutionary. Sister, Nira said carefully, if you do this, if you take a human as your champion in front of the entire fleet, there's no going back. You're making a statement about what the new Commonwealth will be. I know, Lyra said. That's exactly the point. 10 minutes later, Kale found himself strapped into the gunner's seat of an Atheron royal fighter, Lyra at the controls in front of him. The cockpit was tight, intimate, their seats close enough that he could hear her breathing over the comm. Ready? She asked. Absolutely not, Kale admitted. Let's do this anyway. Her laugh was warm in his ear. That's why I chose you. The fighter launched, and suddenly they were in the heart of the battle. Lyra piloted with a skill that took Kale's breath away, rolling between capital ships, dodging fire that would have vaporized them, moving with an intuition that seemed almost precognitive. Broadcasting on all channels now, she said. This is Princess Lyra Atheron, rightful heir to the Commonwealth throne. I invoke the Sovereign Protocol. I offer single combat to determine the outcome of this conflict, with my guardian as my champion witness. Do you accept or do you prove yourselves cowards who hide behind others' deaths? The challenge echoed across every ship, every station, every listening post. For a heartbeat, the battle seemed to pause. Then a single fighter emerged from the Vareth coalition fleet. It was larger than theirs, bristling with weapons painted in the harsh reds and blacks of the coalition. A voice crackled through the comm, male, aged, dripping with contempt. So the little princess has finally learned to bite. Very well. I am Lord Keswick, Vareth Prime Champion. I will enjoy ending your dynasty permanently. The fighters circled each other and Kyle's hands moved to the weapons controls. He'd never flown in combat before, not like this, but his instincts kicked in. Lyra flew, he shot. They moved together like they'd been doing this for years instead of minutes. Keswick was good. Better than good. His fighter dodged their first barrage, returned fire that nearly clipped their wing. Lyra pulled into a spiral that would have made Kale sick if he weren't so focused on targeting. I've got a solution, Kale said, watching the firing patterns. He favors his left shield. If you can get me an angle. On it. Lyra dove, rolled, came up on Keswick's left flank. Kale fired, a sustained burst that hammered into weakened shields. The coalition fighter's left side sparked, buckled. But Keswick wasn't finished. He spun, weapons blazing, catching their underside. Alarm shrieked. Their shields dropped to 30%. Again, Lyra shouted, pushing the fighter into a climb that defied physics. They moved as one organism. Her flying reading his shooting predicting her flying. It was like the bond between them had translated into combat, into perfect synchronization. Keswick fired, they weren't there. Kale lined up a shot. Lyra was already giving him the angle. Now, they said together. Kale fired everything. The combined barrage tore through Keswick's remaining shields and crippled his engines. The coalition fighter tumbled dead in space, Keswick ejecting in an escape pod moments before his craft exploded. Silence. Then, slowly across all channels, Atheron ships began broadcasting a sound, a deep, rhythmic pulse that Kale realized was their battle chant. Victory. They're standing down, Neera's voice came through, awed. The coalition fleet is standing down. Kale, sister, you did it. You actually did it. Lyra didn't respond immediately. Her hands were shaking on the controls. Kyle reached forward, covering them with his own. Hey, he said softly. We're okay. It's over. We won, she whispered. We actually won. They limped back to the flagship where they were met with something Kale never expected. The entire bridge crew standing at attention, fists over hearts in an Atheron salute. The commander stepped forward, tears streaming down her indigo face. Long live Princess Lyra, she said. Long live the Commonwealth reborn. The fleet took up the chant. Across every ship, every station, every Atheron throat, long live the Commonwealth. 2 months later, on the ancient throne world of Aethera Prime, Kale stood beside Lyra as she was crowned. The ceremony was different from the old days. Shorter, simpler, with representatives from a dozen species present, not just Atheron nobility. Change was in the air, fragile but real. Afterward, in the gardens of the royal palace, Lyra found Kale sitting by a fountain that had run dry for 100 years and now flowed again with crystal-clear water. Hiding from the festivities? She asked, settling beside him. She'd changed from her formal robes into something simpler, though she still wore the thin crown that marked her as queen. Just thinking, Kale said, about how strange life is. A few months ago I was a nobody on a dust ball moon. Now you're mine, Lyra said simply. She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. Violet and tan, alien and human, impossibly right. If you still want to be. The bond, forget the bond. She turned to face him fully. I'm not asking as a princess who has a guardian. I'm asking as Lyra. As someone who fell in love with a man who saw two strangers and offered them food and then everything else. Her amber eyes searched his face. Do you want this, want us? Want me? Kale pulled her close, kissing her with the kind of certainty he'd never felt about anything else in his life. When they broke apart, both were smiling. I shared food with two strangers, he said, and got an empire and a queen. I think that's a pretty good trade. Lyra laughed, the sound bright and free. Just a queen? How disappointing. I was hoping for something more. Oh? Kyle raised an eyebrow. Like what? She leaned in, her lips brushing against his ear. Like a partner, like home, like love. Well, in that case, Kale murmured, pulling her into his lap. I definitely got the better deal. They sat there as the sun set on Aethera Prime, painting the sky in shades of violet and gold. Around them, a new commonwealth was being born, imperfect, uncertain, but striving to be better than what came before. And at its heart, a human and an Atheron, bound not by ancient ritual, but by choice, by trust, by the simple act of sharing a meal with strangers and discovering that sometimes the smallest kindness can change everything. Above them, thousands of warships orbited peacefully, no longer instruments of war, but guardians of hope. The future stretched ahead, full of